And this is KTN News.
This is KTN News.
Welcome back to Morning Express. It's now 20 minutes to 7 and time for us to have a conversation regarding the SGR. Now, of course, we do know that's one of the flagship projects for the government, and they had for a long time said that this is one that's going to change the lives of many for the better, especially economically, given the kind of project that it is. But this morning, the conversation we'd like to have is regarding the stalling of the same. And this is because several people have come out to say that it is not in good light some of the path, or rather the path that the SGR is going to be passing through. And we do know that there's a petition currently in court that has stalled that. So joining me to have that conversation this morning is Sydney Kuntai. Sydney is the chair of the Kenya Coalition for Wildlife Conservation and Management. Good morning and thank you for joining us.
Morning, thank you.
We also have Kahindi Lekalaile, who is the director for public affairs, and that is African Network for Animal Welfare. Good morning and thank you for joining us.
Good morning.
All right, gentlemen, thank you for coming this morning. Let me start with you, Sydney. What exactly is the problem?
Well, the problem is that the government, having not consulted the people, decided to just choose a route and decided to proceed with it without doing what is right, which really is that the environmental impact and social assessment should have been the first thing to be done before the project was undertaken. But as we are all aware, work has started even before that requirement has been achieved. They are doing tunneling at Ngong. They started doing a workstation at a place called Kidiri. And this is besides the fact that they should have had a proper study done and engage the public as required by the law before they started the work. So what we decided to go to court, having tried dialoguing with them, and the Kenya Railways and others did not want to dialogue with us. So we thought the best way is to go to the National Environment Tribunal to stop that construction first until what is required by the law is done.
Okay. One might argue that you've come rather late in the day. I mean, the SGR is something that started a long time ago. Why now when it's just about to be flagged, the phase 2 is just about to be flagged off? Where were you all this time?
There's nothing really that can be said to be coming too late, because the project should have started, in fact, way back, and the whole process should have been done the right way. And we cannot just let it continue just because there were some delays here and there. Once something is not right, whether it is late or not, is not right. It cannot be justified. The question
might be, where have you been all this time? Because
we tried, first of all, to deal with phase 1, actually, and we went to court. But we were actually thrown out of court because of some technicality. So the second phase we prepared, and that's why we went the way we went.
Okay.
Yeah.
Kahindi, what is the ultimate impact that the SGR would cause if it went through the park or some of the areas that you're contesting?
Well, first it's good to declare that the SGR as a whole is not a bad project. It is a good project being put in the wrong place. Mm-hmm. And one of the wrong places that it's actually being put is Nairobi National Park. And it's also good to recognize that Nairobi National Park was not in the original corridor, for the railway to pass from Mombasa to Malaba. So this is a deviation, from the original corridor. So that should be understood. Mm-hmm. The second thing is that for you to put the standard gauge railway through Nairobi National Park, certain conditions must be met. Of course, the environmental impact assessment, which my colleague was talking about. Mm-hmm. But secondly, you must be able to adhere to the law. And one of the things that is stipulated in the Wildlife Act is Nairobi National Park must have a management plan. This is a blueprint for managing a wildlife protected area that is according to the Wildlife Act. At the moment, Nairobi National Park does not have a valid management plan. Now, let's look at some of the impacts that we expect to arise as a result of having the standard gauge railway through the park. One is that there will be disturbance of animals in the park, which means that they will leave the park. We have already seen when the first realignment of the park happened, animals like lions and rhinos left the park. And as you may recall, we had a huge outcry when one of the lions was actually shot.
Mohawk. Yes, I remember Mohawk.
That was actually as a result of disturbance caused by the realignment of the standard gauge railway in phase one. The second thing is that as you drill and make your pillars, which are going to be 18 meters high, there's going to be a lot of materials being brought into the park. These will raise the risk of introducing alien species, especially plants, that will compete with some of the plants that animals actually depend on in there. The third thing is that when the animals leave the park and they go to areas, for example, the southern bits of the park that are still occupied by the pastoralists, then there will be an increase in human-wildlife conflict. So which means even if the SGR is completed, there will be no animals to come back. Then there are some very serious tourism impacts that we are risking. Nairobi National Park is the only true wilderness area in a capital city, anywhere in the world. And that provides a very positive image to our country, not just Nairobi National Park. The moment you have the standard gauge railway passing through Nairobi National Park, that reputation is lost in that it will no longer be a true wilderness area in the world. And of course, it will discourage people from choosing the Kenyan tourism product coming through. So those are some of the key main impacts that may arise if we go through with constructing the standard gauge railway inside Nairobi National Park.
All right. Sydney, what exactly would a Kenya Coalition for Wildlife and Conservation Management want to achieve once this petition goes through court? Is it for the park, for the SGR not to go through the park at all?
Precisely. In fact, there are 7 routes that were proposed before they finally settled on this route through the national park. The other route that they tried, which actually would have gone outside the park, was also and still is not a viable one. Because what we are saying, and this I want us to be very clear about, is that going through the park is not negotiable. The park and its environs. So route number 4, which they are saying, the modified one, which goes through the park, and route number 7, which goes just slightly outside the park, are not routes that are viable at all. Mm-hmm. Because if you go out of the park, you're still on the environs of the park, you'll still create the same impacts that we're talking about. You'll, in fact, constrict the area such that the animals cannot even move from one side of the park to the dispersal areas. So those 2 routes are out, and what we are saying is that there are alternatives. Let's look at the other alternatives, and that is where we think we should focus our attention on, getting the railway out of the park into an area so that we can proceed. We know there was a route going through Kibera. I don't know why that one was left out. And the Kenya Railways has not come out clearly to even explain why they left out the other 6 routes and opted for this one. So that is something else that we are saying should have been put on the table. The other day they started consultative meetings with the community, despite the fact that there's an order stopping any activity. So therefore what we are saying is that let's get there, let us look at the options available and agree on an option that is the best option. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right, Kahindi. Is it also from your organization, African Network for Animal Welfare, is it non-negotiable for the SGR to pass through the park?
It is non-negotiable. Mm-hmm. And in actual fact, passing the SGR through the park in the current circumstances is wrong. And even by doing an environmental impact assessment, it doesn't make it right, at all. Mm-hmm. And then the second thing is Nairobi National Park does not have the carrying capacity for an infrastructure of that magnitude. It is only 117 square kilometers. If you compare that to Tsavo National Park, Tsavo National Park is 21,000 square kilometers. And the standard gauge railway did not go beyond or outside the designated corridor for SGR from Mombasa all the way to Makueni. It actually stuck to the original route. And then if you look at Nairobi National Park, some arguments have been that there will be noise deflectors and that tourists will enjoy, riding, going over the park and looking at animals. That train will be going at 110 to 120 square kilometers. That means that the train will be covering 2 kilometers per minute. So the maximum amount of time a tourist will even be inside the park is 3 minutes. So we wonder how much satisfaction can a tourist get in 3 minutes through the park? And then secondly, noise deflectors are supposed to go to the level of the engine. So that means it will cover the windows. So which animals does the proponent, of the project purport will provide satisfaction to a tourist, going through the park? So if you look at it in all dimensions, it is actually not negotiable. Nairobi National Park is the pride of the citizens of Kenya, and more so Nairobi. It is actually a wonderful symbol for conservation. And what we are urging Kenyans to do is to be vigilant and urge the government to be responsible in development. Responsible development is actually what everybody is asking for. Conservation areas are so few. In actual fact, we are looking for more space to increase conservation areas in this country. So constructing the standard gauge railway through Nairobi National Park is actually reducing and constricting already legal designated conservation areas. And in spite of the fact that we are doing it outside the law, we are still insisting that it's for the development of the country. Development of the country does not mean destroying your national parks. And that's why we insist you cannot negotiate on Nairobi National Park.
All right, Sydney, since there has been protests that several people have done the whole of, I think it was last week and the week before, today being the day that there was supposed to be the unveiling or opening of phase 2, are we expecting any protests today?
Not at all. In fact, we are aware that the launching is not on unless they do it somewhere else and secretly. But we will continue with our protests. And in fact, this coming Saturday, 1st of October, we shall be going to where the route is supposed to start. We shall be occupying that route. And we shall also be showing Kenyans who have not been able to see that the impacts of phase 1, where the SGR has cut through the park, are terrible. In fact, the park was affected negatively by the southern bypass, and much more so by phase 1. We shall be doing our demonstration from where that phase 1 is and going all the way to where the phase 2 is supposed to be. We'll occupy that route for the entire day.
What impact do we have so far on phase 1? What can we tangibly say has been an impact of phase 1 where it touches the park?
Actually, serious degradation. We can see they are messing around, removing a lot of the maram on the ground there, and there's a lot of dust. A lot of blasting was going on when they were doing the pillars. And mark you, the pillars in phase 2 will be a longer distance than what they have done in phase 1.
Okay.
The impacts are there. Anyone can see them. And we shall be documenting them. And then finally, we have also commissioned a study to show that the SGR and Nairobi National Park are two mutually exclusive, and they cannot be at the same area. At the same
All right, thank you very much, gentlemen. We'll have to wind it up right there. Kahindi, in one phrase, if this does not happen, if you lose the court petition, what next?
There are other ways of addressing, the issue, and I don't think that the government and